Alrighty, hello every folks, and welcome to part 2 of interesting stuff about the Parry blade here, because there were actually a bunch of little tests and discoveries that were done since last time, so just wanted to kind of answer those questions as they came along. So first of all, one question that came up very often is whether or not melee MTs actually are affected by the parry and shield combo. So if we go ahead and test this over here. Alright, so you can kind of see an interesting thing here where, yes, it is being parried, but there doesn't seem to be a sort of a knockback state for MTs. So it mostly just does damage reduction, and that's it. They don't really take the normal knockback effect. Same thing applies to the stabby MTs. They can get blocked. However, usually their attack is coming from the other side, so there is a good chance for them to avoid the shield. Alright, then our second question here is whether or not this still works in Last Raven. And as we get close, we'll be able to show that, yes, in fact, it does still exist in Last Raven. It exists in all of the 3rd gen games. Interestingly enough, as far as whether or not it exists in AC2, no, the Parry Blade was not yet invented. So presumably, that's why it doesn't exist there. If this guy feels like blading at any point, I don't want to quite finish him off. Are you gonna try, or what's going on here, buddy? I mean, normally he would try blading by this point, but apparently he's just feeling very finicky. Anyway, well, we're trying to get this guy to show that this mechanic does in fact still exist. There we go. See? It's getting parried, stunned. Another little quirk to this, by the way. More often than not, even if you punch somebody in the arm or chest, it'll actually end up being the head that explodes in Last Raven. Additionally, for AC2, so yeah, for AC2, it'll glance off a blade, so it'll give you a lot of extra defense against it. It does not have any stagger effect against any ACs or MTs as far as I was able to find. I would assume the same for Another Age. I don't have any copies of Another Age at the moment. So our next thing here is in regards to Evangel. So there was a mention going around for a little bit, theorizing that it was impossible to parry Evangel, that he simply ignored the parry mechanic, which at first seemed to be confirmed. However, upon further testing, I don't believe so. So there's a bit of an interesting mechanical situation here. We'll see if we can get him to blade real quick to show you what I'm talking about. But Evangel tends to spend a lot of time in the air. Now, granted, most of the time he's just spamming his guns here, as he does. See if he ever decides to get close. This part is a little bit finicky, because you honestly shouldn't be trying to parry Evangel in the first place. But he can be parried. The thing is, he usually attacks from the air, which means he usually uses his horizontal slash instead of the diagonal one. So, like right there, you may have noticed, okay, he's going up a hill, and it seems to not be effective. So we'll go ahead and keep trying this until we actually do get the parry. See, the thing is, there's a few different mechanics at play here. When it comes to the parry mechanic, it wasn't seemingly designed to be used on maps like LR has. So for one thing, it's that. For another, it's the fact that some of the hitboxes are a little bit weird in the PSP version. I found it a little bit easier to land in the PS2 version. But as far as theories go, what I believe is happening here is that it has a kind of like crescent-shaped square in front of you for about half of your left side of your AC that actually counts as the hitbox for this thing. Meaning, if he does a horizontal slash, it more often than not will simply hit your shoulder pads first, and therefore not register a parry. So like there, you saw right there, he did get his knockback there if he's attacking normally, but if he's going ahead and attacking with a horizontal slash, it more often than not will hit the shoulder pads or your arm instead. Additionally, with all these little maps that I was talking about, these little slides that LR absolutely loves to add everywhere, well, basically these little slopes cause it so that he also ends up attacking above or below. Additionally, since he does seem to fly a whole bunch, he seems to slash, again, either above it or into your shoulder. So it's not exactly a reliable or good idea to parry this guy, but you can technically parry this guy. Same thing applies to Zenaida, who similarly does a whole lot of similar blading type stuff. Okay, to address one quick thing, by the way, it doesn't really apply in LR, but there was a mention earlier that that ammo packs would affect the parry blade in some of the games. I have tested the entirety of the series. Any game that has both a parry blade and ammo pack, no, they are never affected by an ammo pack. It's simply a durability rating. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and test out Formula Front next. So I set up one parrying build and one blading build, and we'll just kind of see how that goes. But while they're doing their thing, a couple little quick notes here. So I'll show this in a sec here, but when it comes to the parry and shield, the shield, or shields in particular, so solid shields don't actually have the parry mechanic on them, interestingly enough. Looks like, here, we'll go ahead and look at it from this guy's perspective, because he is more likely to be able to show this off here. I probably should have set them both to walk, but, well, you know, gotta get good metrics on this. But yeah, the solid shields do not have a parry mechanic, but they do actually both benefit from a sort of extended, like, I don't know if I'd call it an extended stagger mechanic, but basically stuff like, for example, the self-destruct explosions and LR and stuff like that tend to affect them less for whatever reason. It seems like they maybe half the range or so. So sometimes if you have a shield up, you won't actually get hit by the explosion of an MT or an AC. It's a little finicky, though, because sometimes I've seen it work, sometimes it didn't. I'm not entirely sure what determines that. Maybe it just has a weird hitbox or something. But yes, the shield can block it, and solid shields seem a little better at that. Okay, that looked like a parry right there. He was mid-air, but his blade did stop as soon as he contacted the shield. Yeah, okay, so parry mechanic does still work in Formula Front. So this means that every 3rd gen game has this, 2nd gen does not, and this is across all versions. So I did test this on the PS2 version of this earlier, as well as the PS2 versions for 2 and 3, as well as Last Raven. So, yes, ultimately the conclusion here is, yes, it basically blocks all AC-type attacks. It seems to have a hitbox that's sort of a wide rectangle of sorts. If something's attacking directly horizontally, it seems like the hitbox of the shoulder pads, you know, whether you have whether you actually have wide shoulders on there or whether you actually have side shields or whatever else, it seems like those will actually affect it more. So you'll essentially end up losing out on the parry mechanic that way. That being said, side shields do actually we can probably show those off as well. Side shields do actually have the parry mechanic as well. I was mistaken on that. They do have a stun. So we'll go ahead and slap some of those on here. Alright, so another little interesting quirk of this mission, by the way, going back to it. So it turns out that something that Hellhound brought up is that, yeah, you actually cannot destroy his right arm. Apparently FromSoft got a little bit touchy about the fact that people could, well, essentially could cause the whole, like, I'm gonna point my stumpy arm at the pulverizer thing. Interestingly enough, he still will drop his gun if he runs out of shots, but yeah, sure enough, his arm can't be blown off. I've tested this extensively now. Honestly, didn't believe it at first, but sure enough, yeah, he actually cannot lose his right arm. It's very strange. You can hit it with, I think the maximum I've gotten is like 6 large missiles onto it, and yeah, no, that's just, it's just not going anywhere. So no amount of damage seems to take it off there. I've hit it with the Neo here. It also, like, I believe this is the single highest hit in the game, but it also cannot do it. Now, it would be a lot more effective to test the effectiveness of these side shields if he'd actually bother to get close at any point, but, you know. Last Raven's gonna last Raven sometimes. There we go. There we go. See? With the shoulder pads, you can far more effectively block this guy. So, technically speaking, that kind of would mean that the shoulder pads are just effectively the better shield option overall, because they can essentially block the guys that you actually do want to parry. But you can see he gets parried just fine. Now, granted, getting hit like 8 times with the Moonlight is still going to kill you pretty good, so probably not the best way to go about it. But if you're looking to set up what effectively is kind of like the Vanguard from Mass Effect, all you really got to do is just pretty much set up anything with really, really good energy. So one interesting thing to kind of mention here is the fact that you can't actually put a parry blade into your hanger slot, which is kind of odd considering that, I mean, the whole hanger slot system is actually modeled after a system they used in Shadow Tower, and I believe in some of the Kingsfield games, where you basically had, essentially secondary weapons. And same thing with the durability system. For anyone that's never played one of those, yeah, you could just basically, you had 2 weapon slots, kind of like the whole Dark Souls thing, more or less. It eventually became, all of this eventually became Dark Souls, let's be blunt. But the funny part is that, yeah, you actually can't use it in the same way. I'm not entirely sure why, because you actually could in Verdict Day. But moving on. So this is kind of funny because, yeah, it does situationally save you from self-destruct explosions. Now, usually you got to be right on top of them. It's like right here, reasonable distance. That feels like it normally would have done some damage there, but we're protected from it. And I don't know if it's just it starts reducing damage at a certain point or something. Like maybe you can reduce it to 0. Like if we're actively running into them while doing it, we still take some damage, but we don't take the stagger from it. So it seems like they don't really reduce stagger to any degree, but they do at least, reduce damage. I feel like it reduces the explosion range by about half, but either way, let's go ahead and poke this guy. So we're reasonably far away, and he pops, and there you see it. Okay, not that this really needed much verification, but as you can see, yeah, all these do is provide extra defense. They don't actually have a parry mechanic attached to them. So, yeah, this does mean that, yeah, it turns out energy shields have been the better option all along. And as you can see, despite the fact that it's clearly his arm and chest that are getting punched, it is his head that came off. This does seem to apply in both versions of Last Raven, so not sure what the hell that's about. But, yeah, I assume there's kind of like an upward punch to it, to some degree. But I can't really tell for sure, not unless somebody comes up with some kind of hitbox viewer. Like, in my testing, it's actually been incredibly difficult to actually be able to punch off an arm. You literally have to punch somebody from the side in order to be able to have a chance of removing the arm. So, to answer another question that folks had, can you parry this guy? No. He is also an MT, he doesn't really have a stagger animation, but you can tank him pretty good, and in theory, you might be able to, you might potentially be able to get him with, with the heavier parry and all that kind of thing. Actually, why don't we give that a try? By the way, for anyone wondering, as far as best in slot options or whatever else, as far as shields, parries, and whatever else go, as far as I've been able to tell, shield coverage seems to be the biggest deal, though the AC2 shield that's brought back in Last Raven Portable seems to be the best overall. There we go, fixed it. Okay, but yeah, the AC2 shield in Last Raven Portable seems to be the best overall. It doesn't say that it has as good coverage, but it clearly covers a bigger area and just seems to be more reliable. Now, is that wrong? I don't know. But yeah, he seemed to take stagger from this thing just fine. And unfortunately, since he decided to do the optimal Dark Souls approach and just land behind me, yeah, let's try that again. I think I've seen somebody 3-shot that thing with a parry before. Don't know why, my voice went all funky. But yeah, final notes on this whole thing. Yeah, as far as parry blades are concerned, I mean, it's definitely not going to be an optimal situation by any means, but it's still a really cool thing that these mechanics exist, in my opinion. It's just really darn fun. And yeah, pretty much as far as the parry rules and all that, it's, again, a rectangular box. It seems to be on the left side. A horizontal cut can go above or below the shield, and additionally, slopes in Last Raven seem to heavily interfere with your ability to parry stuff, so always be on a flat surface if you're trying to make use of the mechanic. Side shields seem to do the job just fine when it comes to covering those weaknesses, though, and thankfully it actually flips between early 3rd gen and late 3rd gen, because in early 3rd gen side shields are way more expensive, meanwhile they're way cheaper in later 3rd gen. to actually make use of. I'm talking about energy-wise, by the way. These basic, the ghetto shields, as I like to call them here, because they look all rusty. These ones cost almost nothing to use in Last Raven and are a fantastic way to counter blade builds. I would honestly say that these are, especially with how many flying ACs and especially how many flying bladers there are, these are fantastic in Last Raven, while shields are definitely a lot more effective in 3 and Silent Line, like regular arm shields. But yeah, this is a really fun mechanic. Parry blades and stuff like that are really darn good fun to use. As far as the differences between them, basically, if you want your day-to-day one, your Sprox, or basically your high capacity one also has the longest range. That one tends to be your best for day-to-day type stuff. If you're looking for AC versus AC, typically the mid one is the best, and if you're looking for anti-boss, typically the heavy one is the best. They do overheat you on use, just fair warning, so the heavier they are, the more they overheat your own AC on use. And that's what that deploy cost is there. And yeah, that about sums it up. The only thing I haven't really covered is heat insulation when it comes to the shields, and basically it just reduces incoming heat from different sources, as you'd expect. It only seems to calculate for the surface that it's hit, so for example, activating both the side shields and the arm shield, it seems to only actually count for the one that it hits at the time. It doesn't seem to count both of them, which makes sense. So it's a bit more significant than you may realize, because with the best heat insulation, you actually can take a volley of missiles and still be okay. You can potentially avoid going into overheat with that, so I believe there's a lot more viability to shields, I know, than I personally previously realized. Parry blades are still kind of but, whatever. They're still dang fun to use. I love that these mechanics exist. And that's kind of about that. So you guys have a good one. I hope this was helpful and interesting, and let me know if you have any other things that you'd like to bring up. Take care.